Hey everybody. So one of the quickest ways to ruin a good deer hunting property is to deal with trespassing issues. Fortunately for us, we haven't had to deal really with trespassers on our farm, but I know people who have had to deal with trespassers and it's exceedingly frustrating. So today I want to talk about 5 different tactics you can utilize to hopefully slow down or stop trespassing on your property. I'm not promising that these are bulletproof, but they are 5 tactics that you can try and hopefully it helps to stop the problem. Alright, so the first tactic is the most obvious, but if you know who the individual is that's trespassing on your property, just go talk to them. Most people, if you go and look them in the eye and you are firm yet respectful, and you tell them that you don't want them walking around on your property, most people will comply if they are any type of decent human being. There's something about going to deal with somebody face to face that adds a level of respect that most people will give to you, and they'll stop trespassing on your property, especially in this day of social media where everything's via text or through social media and things like that. To actually step up and look somebody in the eye and talk to them face to face, it can make a huge difference. Now that's not always going to work, but I would definitely try this first if you know who the individual that's trespassing on your property is. Tactic number 2, if you've talked to them and it's not working, you still are dealing with trespassing issues, or let's say you're next to state land or state park where you get people walking their dog or just wanting to bump on over from state land. Tactic number 2 that you can utilize is to cut the property line hard. Now, when you do this, you got to understand that you might be cutting off deer movement too. So if you're relying on bedding from the neighbors, or you're relying on the deer to come to yours from the neighbors, you obviously wouldn't want to do this. But if you're in a situation where you hold the deer and the deer don't necessarily go on to the neighbors, or you don't, that line of movement doesn't matter that much, you can cut the property line hard. And I would use a combination of hinge cuts and flush cuts. Hinge cuts will be better because a tree like this, that's hinge cut, you can see there's tons of the tree still left in place. So that tree is going to stay alive and essentially make a living bush. So you'll be able to kind of make a fence with the hinge cut tree. Or you can just flush cut and drop trees along the line too, because what will happen when you flush cut those trees is that the woody regeneration will come up through that treetop and essentially make a living thicket right on that property line. So I would use a combination of both. If you do not feel competent with a chainsaw, obviously I would find somebody that is competent. If you've never used hinge cuts, only certain trees hinge cut well, so it might be best just to flush cut trees if you're not comfortable doing hinge cuts, because you do have to be careful when you're utilizing hinge cuts. You have to do it safely, stand off to the side, and know what type of tree you're cutting, because if you're cutting trees that don't hinge well, they can definitely barber chair and snap off, and it can be a dicey situation. So you need to know what you're doing with that. So if you've never hinge cut trees before, flush cuts are the way to go. Notch and fell them. But cutting that property line hard can create a living thicket along that property line that people aren't going to want to walk through. You know, if you make it a big tangled mess, you can cut off most people, because normally it's pretty easy to tell where people want to access your property. So if you cut off that access point utilizing some hard chainsawing, that can be one way to kind of deter people from entering your property. Just keep in mind, you might cut off that deer movement as well. So you have to know your property and whether or not the deer are on yours or they're coming from the neighbors. All right, here's another obvious one, but some people just don't take the time to do it, but post your property. I mean, post your property. Make sure there is no question that you do not want people accessing and trespassing on your property. So look up whatever the DNR guidelines are for your state as far as what a legally posted property is, as far as the spacing for the signs that you're going to post, and maybe even go above and beyond that and add even more signs. Another sign to add that will likely deter a lot of people is find a sign that you add to all your posted signs that says this property is under video surveillance. That can be a huge one. If people are worried about the fact that they may be being watched, that can be a big time deterrent. So post with the no trespassing sign, but also add that sign that says that your property is under video surveillance. All right, number 4, kind of an obvious one, but put your property under video surveillance. Get cell cameras and hide them well in areas where folks are likely to trespass. So if you've had that talk, or you've been dealing with trespassers for a long time and you're ready to get to that point of, okay, push comes to shove and I might need to actually do something about this via the legal route, get those cell cameras out and yeah, get ready to do some video surveillance. See who's walking on your property, and then if you do get pictures of trespassers, prosecute them. Like that's the only way. If you have been dealing with this for a long time and these people just aren't listening to you, or it's by public land where same people seem to want to keep trespassing over and over again, you might just have to step up and prosecute them. So get the cell cameras out, hide them very well, lock them down so they don't get stolen, and see if you can catch people in the act. Once somebody gets prosecuted, that would hopefully deter them from trespassing again. But we do have the technology now where we can kind of take matters into our own hands instead of trying to catch them in the act when we're out in the woods. So get cell cameras and don't be afraid to actually press charges if you catch people in the act. All right, the last one and the most expensive option is deer fence. Now there are more and more companies popping up that are willing to put up fences around your property. Obviously you can't enclose the whole thing, but if you have one neighbor along one line, or you're next to state ground or whatever, you can utilize deer fence. But it is very expensive. But you also got to think about the level of stress it's causing you, or how much it's impacting your hunting, to weigh the cost versus the benefit, you know. So if you feel like it's just absolutely ruining your hunting, it's ruining the habitat, and it's causing you to stress out every fall dealing with this trespassing, it might be worth the investment to put in a fence to completely shut down trespassing along that one line that's giving you problems. But again, that's going to alter deer movement, so you have to also keep that in mind as you're considering deer fence. Now that's one, I only know of one landowner that I've known that's utilized that option, but it is effective and it will stop trespassing. So something to consider if you're at the point where you just don't have other options. Deer fence can be a good option. It's just very expensive to actually put into practice. So at the end of the day, trespassing sucks. It's just, it can ruin a hunt, it can ruin a property, and just destroy that experience for yourself and your family. It sucks to have to deal with it. My best advice is just to get ahead of it and have great neighbor relations. If you get along really, really well with your neighbors, they are far less likely to trespass than if your neighbors are strangers and they don't know you. So go above and beyond to get to know your neighbors. We are very blessed on our farm to know all of our neighbors, and we get along very well with all of our neighbors. I'll share trail cam pics, hunting success pics, what I saw off stand. I'll share that with any one of my neighbors because I want to have good neighbor relations, and I don't want something like trespassing or some other neighborly feud to ruin the hunt for me or my family, because we enjoy it far too much. We love connecting with the Lord out in His creation, and we want to make sure that not just us but our neighbors are able to enjoy their experience out in creation as well. All right, you all take care. God bless.